there everybody, Reed here, conductor at Orchestra Farm. You know, we just here on Salt Spring had an epic amount of rain. You can see there in the distance, my farm is flooded. From the sounds of it, since I don't live here, the whole thing was actually flooded. Right up to my guess, where I'm standing right now. That's pretty amazing. You know, we're living in a century which is likely to have possibly more change than the Earth has ever experienced in a given century. And though that is likely to be a lot climatically related, I also see it's people related. You know, where with modern genetic information discovering that, you know, Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, Devenosian, I don't know if I said that right, but are all bits of DNA that are within our human genome, as in we're a mixed species. Thanks, kale plant. And I ponder with all of the, maybe I'll call them advancements in science, but seriously, some of it is just wackadoodleness, that we're actually at a time of sub-speciating. And you might think, Reed, what do you mean by that? Well, let's say that our microbiomes are a significant aspect to our idea of who we are as a species. That saying, the microbiome of indigenous people who live on their land and in relation with their environment in a deep way is really unique to their location in themselves. Whereas someone living in a modern Western city, living on what I would describe as a chemical diet, like all your food comes in a box, it has words that you probably don't even know what they are. And there, your microbiome is very different than that of the indigenous people. Like, it's a lot smaller. There's not as much diversity in your microbiome. And diversity is actually a really important aspect to nature. So, those individuals like myself who have a little farm like this and try to eat from it as much as possible, we also have a unique microbiome comparative to that of the people in the city. Now, let's add in a totally different idea, which is technology. That's right. Me, relating to my current smartphone, relating to how I engage in social media or our online environment, and the notion that those spaces are going to be increasing in their dominance in life. Like, if you look up how often people are spending time online and in those zones, it is significant for a lot of people. And you might, during this century, see people embedding technology into their body in a way where if you were to take it off, it'll cause them harm. Just like if you destroy my microbiome, I'm gonna get sick. And each of these different aspects, I feel, is on the thread of evolution in the realm of sub-speciating, going from just straight Homo sapiens sapien with whatever bit of Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, Devenosian, and any number of other question marks from our past that we don't yet know about, to maybe like techno-sapien sapien homo, or however they would phrase that. Look at, that's a lot of water. That's a big change. These are big changes I'm talking about. And I wonder if we're going to be able to appreciate that diversity. Now, there's a map of North America, and it shows all these different names of indigenous tribes who were here, who maybe are still here, if we haven't completely destroyed them. And thankfully we haven't destroyed all of them. Props to all the survivors out there and the people continuing to speak their cultural languages and demonstrate their life choices. And sometimes adapt and you take on certain aspects of a culture. Like not everyone's going to have technology implanted on them, but you might use it a little bit. It does have perks at times. And so I ponder with that, if we can actually start to appreciate the diversity that we have and actually try to maintain it, like give space to all the different beings and their different unique culture sets to be, and respect different life choices. We don't all have to live the exact same life. How you choose your, what kind of medical care you desire, or, you don't desire. I've always thought it weird how the Christian scientists think you're just going to straight pray everything better. When it's like, yeah, sometimes I got a broken leg and I freaking want a doctor to straighten it out, put it in its place, and, help me with that. Or, if I'm bleeding out all over the place, sometimes they can do something for that. There's any number of aspects to this, and I think it's a good thing to think about, because as technology grows at a rate that's hard to fathom sometimes, and synthetic biology comes in, which I haven't spoken of, but will add a whole other degree of relating to it, and the notion that, with our genetic information, in the near future, you could easily tell if your kid has Down syndrome or some other hereditary thing within their genome before they're even out of the womb space, and the notion of maybe your insurance company isn't going to give you insurance if you have that kid naturally and don't change those parts of their genetics. How many live birth, unmodified people will there be? Again, these are variations on sub-speciating, and it's happening fast. And if you don't think about the things that are happening fast, they tend to just roll right through and affect the change, and you just kind of go along it without thinking critically about it. And I personally think it's important to think critically about all the change that's happening. Otherwise, you get railroaded by the few zealots that are out there thinking that they know what's right, when seriously, we don't know what's right. We've screwed stuff up so much of the time and then don't find out for years, decades, centuries later what the problem was. I think we're experiencing some of that right now. The goal is to always be doing better, and sometimes doing better is doing less. Sometimes it's not just a state of growth that's good for us, but a state of decay is actually good for us. Recognizing that there are multiple seasons, seemingly no matter what climate part of the world you're in. It obviously changes depending on that. Right now, we're in the wet season here in Salt Spring Island, and there's a particular beauty in it. I could also see it as devastation. We'll see how the crops that are in the ground are doing, and how my little trees that are, my hazelnut trees are totally buried over there. Calling them a tree is a little strong at this point. They're just a little whip. But how are you going to be holding on to your lineage while all of this change happens? What aspects of this are you going to encourage? What do you want to keep from the culture that you're a part of? And how are you going to adapt? And is it going to be adaptation because you desire it, or because it's pressed upon you? And recognize the difference between the freedom of choosing something compared to the tyranny of having something pushed onto you. Well, this might not be the most fun topic for many of you out there, but it's by being able to see the world as it is, by seeing what's coming down the line, that I personally have a bunch of fun. Love thinking about this stuff. You got questions for me? You got comments about this? I would love to see what they are. I see some ducks landing on the pond. Anyway, with that, I'm Reed Richard. Check me out at bendingreeds.com. Thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. All the best. Aloha.